It's Thursday, time to look at some of the newest data coming in overnight for the snow totals that we're going to see with this cold weather pattern that's starting to set up. And we're also going to look a little bit at the long range outlook in just a minute. Let's talk about some of the new long range data too, because I think it turns cold and snowy as we head into December. This is a look at the 32-day snow totals on the European ensemble guidance. But in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're going to dig into this big cold pattern that's setting up. Let's take you through the next couple of days. I'm going to back it up just a little bit. Here's where we are on Thursday as we head into the afternoon. We do have a little bit of light snow falling across parts of Alberta, moving into Saskatchewan, eventually into Manitoba. Not a lot of snow up in here. Otherwise, pretty warm. Another nice day across the central United States with temperatures above average here as high pressure shifts off the east coast. We are seeing a little bit of windy condition, or a little bit of wind, and a few showers across the northeast, a few snow showers wrapping up, but we're already looking to the next system that's, again, driving east toward the Great Lakes. That's bringing that rain and, yeah, a little bit of snow on the north side of it across the Pacific Northwest into the west parts of, really right here along the coast in British Columbia. Some heavy snow and rain possible, and it's still snowy across parts of Alaska. Anchorage getting pounded again with another storm just off the coast with wind and rain. This system continues to slide off to the east. We're going to see multiple chances for snow across at least southern parts of Canada. As far south, I think, as North Carolina and Tennessee. I'll show you what I mean. This first system swinging through is going to bring a little bit of light snow, some rain to the south. This first front's going to pass by. Temperatures will start to drop behind it. Certainly not going to be unprecedented for this time of year, but we are going to see our temperatures go back closer to average. And then here comes the second system. This one has a little bit of energy with it. This is the one I think you have to really watch, and I think this is the one that could put down a little bit of heavy snow on the synoptic side of it, just with the system versus lake effect, which I think we will see plenty of it because a lot of Arctic air behind this system. Temperatures on the way down. We're going to continue to watch this area of low pressure deepen as it moves toward the Great Lakes, almost right up Lake Erie and Ontario. That means, I think, for a lot of New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, we start as rain. Temperatures will be warm, but on the north side of this, maybe into Michigan, crossing the border into Ontario, some heavy snow possible. It could really add up. I think that right there is the sweet spot. A closer look at that in just a second, but look how the Arctic connection has been made. Heading into Monday and Tuesday, you're picking up lake effect snow off of Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, Ontario. I mean, all the lakes. Even the UP of Michigan is going to get a little bit of snow out of this off of Superior, and that snow will extend as far south as the mountains of western North Carolina. It'll be interesting to watch this bowling ball of cold air aloft as it swings through East Tennessee and Kentucky. Underneath that, I do think we get a little bit of light snow into the Cumberland Plateau still. And then looking a little bit more long range now, we're talking about next Tuesday into Wednesday. This is not going to last. We're going to see westerly winds start to pick up as high pressure settles over the south. Temperatures on the way up with this type of setup. And we're watching this next piece of energy across the Pacific Northwest, just to your south and west, really, here of British Columbia. This has the potential, I think, to drive a little bit further to the south into parts of the southwestern U.S. There's been a lot of variability in the outlooks once you get toward the 16th, 17th, and 18th. So more to come on that. Let's talk about the snow totals. Maybe that's why a lot of you are here. A quick national look at the European, and then we're going to dive into each of these regions a little bit closer. Here's the overnight GFS. Let's zoom in a little bit closer on some of the numbers. So this is, by the way, before we get too far into this is the potential for seeing 1 inch of snow. This is the early morning run. This was last night's run. I want to take you all the way back to yesterday's midday run. So a little bit more color here. I think that's just because your chances for seeing that accumulating snow, it's going up. That's what that tells me when you look at the different guidance members. That takes more than 50 models, basically, of the European and combines it. So pretty good data there. That's what I like to look at when we start talking about snow totals and chances. This is the European, this is the deterministic. This is just one run from the early morning hours. A little bit of snow moving through parts of Ontario into Quebec as we head into Friday into Saturday. Here comes the cold, though. We start to feel that with a little bit of light snow across Wisconsin, down into Michigan, Minnesota. And then as your low wraps up, there comes the snow into parts of Michigan, now into parts of Ontario. Maybe Toronto. I think once you get north of the city, that's going to be the best chance for snow. Get away from the lake, get a little bit of elevation, and it's certainly going to help. And then this really starts to wrap up, and behind this, lake effect starts to pick up. Downwind of Lake Michigan, here into Indiana. watch out how this plume of moisture sets up. There could be some really heavy snow with this type of setup as this cold pocket of air moves south. And then, the European is picking up on those colder snows, or those colder conditions, rather, creating the snow all the way into the southern Appalachians. We'll zoom in on that. Let's go first to the northeast with these snow totals. We're going to move pretty quickly through this. There comes the snow as we head into Sunday night into Monday. Again, most of that falling north of the border into Canada here. I don't think we're going to see as much in Montreal. It's really north of here. Along the river, a little bit too warm, but still a couple of inches possible. Watch this storm, though. If the track shifts just a little bit, you could be in that heavy snow. And then behind it, cold northwest winds. It puts the snow into the mountains here. And then downwind of the lakes, a couple of inches possible. Maybe Jamestown picking up on some snow. Rochester a little bit over towards Syracuse. But certainly you guys have seen much bigger snow events than what we're looking at here. But it's your first of the year, so it's always a little something to watch. Get you, sometimes it's a little depressing. It lets you know what's ahead. It's all down here from here if you don't like cold and winter. Across the southern Appalachians, we're talking about some snow too, here into western North Carolina, into the Smokies. Down into Gatlinburg, we talked a little bit about this last night, into the Tri-Cities, Knoxville, down to Chattanooga. I mean, you could see a few flakes, but you're going to have to get up into the mountains before you see it into southwest Virginia. Anything over blue, that's where you could see more than 2 inches of snow. But once you head into the mountains of West Virginia, think up into this region, northeast West Virginia, Canaan Valley, Snowshoe, the highest elevations are going to see some snow. And it's interesting to watch how this band is setting up across southern Ohio. That's just picking up on that idea of how that plume may end up expanding like this along our wind field. Maybe some heavy snow, some accumulating snow anyway, across parts of southern Ohio if that ends up coming to pass. A closer look into this region. There's your snow totals taking you all the way into Tuesday. This is the area to watch at first, right? So this is the overnight European run. It was much further to the south. I want to show you the early morning run. Bit of a shift north, but that matters if you're watching in Detroit, right? So the overnight trend, which uses more data, this European model, I think it's a little more accurate. Those 0Z and 12Z runs, it's Zulu time. They're a little more accurate in my opinion. So, and I'm leaning more towards the European. I have been with this event. I think that's just where it's at. And this is a closer look at how that lake effect snow is going to be falling here into parts of northeast Ohio. Erie, PA, a little bit of snow on the way. Even Jamestown getting some snow out of this on the backside. Further to the north, across the rest of Michigan, into Wisconsin. Again, some lighter snows up into this region. The UP is going to pick up some snow as well. Even some lighter snow further to the north. A lot of this snow is going to be associated with the Clipper as it dives south, and then your lake effect kicks in. So there's some timing for you. And there could be even a few flurries further to the south as we get that transition from rain shower activity to some snow. And then further to the north, as the Clipper dives across the prairies, we've talked about that lighter snow amount that's going to be falling here, just a couple of inches. And then across the west, not as much snow. Bit of a breakout here, just into the mountains. A lot of this falling even as we speak across Idaho. Another shot as we head into the weekend across Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, into the mountains. You guys have certainly seen bigger snows here as well. Let's start here because this is where our systems are right now. Here's one piece of energy. Here's the second moving into the northwest. That's going to eventually move east of the mountains, bringing that snow down or along into parts of South Dakota. Rain mixing with snow across Iowa. We'll go further east, but the cold air, high pressure settling down the east side of the Rockies. Out west, warmer temperatures, in fact, above average. Going to go pretty quickly here today as we go across the Central Plains. There comes the rain as we head into Friday. Colder weather behind this, especially up into the northern plains, into the upper Midwest. And then here comes the Clipper system dropping south. Low pressure on the north side of this, maybe some snow. Look how the European trying to mix some snow in here across central Iowa with the rain. And then it flips back over to full rain during the day on Saturday. And then behind it, some colder air changes any leftover moisture over to a few flurries and snow showers. And listen, this is not going to be a big snow down into the south. You're going to have a hard time seeing flurries, but you could see a few early Sunday morning mixing in across this part of the country. The heavier snow, though, further to the north and east. Cold conditions. This is going to be where the coldest air will be on Sunday, dropping south. There comes the lake effect really picking up. Look at that plume. Follow these isobars. Look at that. Perfectly moving down Lake Michigan. So that's why you're going to have such a good moisture fetch. And also the coldest air aloft is headed right toward the southern Appalachians. So your best lift is going to be associated with that. I'm going to move your temperatures ahead pretty quickly to this cold that's headed your way, and you can get an idea of how cold we're talking about. Once you get towards your afternoon into the evening, here's about your high temperatures. A lot of 30s on the board now, and then overnight lows dropping into the 20s. And look at Sunday, much colder across the south, all the way down into Oklahoma. We see that cold air push south into Monday. Monday's high temperatures chilly, especially the further east you go into Kentucky and Tennessee. Let's go east. The calm before the cold. In fact, warmer temperatures today into tomorrow across a lot of the Midwest. Here comes the front, though, that's going to bring it into that as we head into Friday morning. Another warm day out ahead of this across the east. Temperatures pretty nice. There comes the front. Moving this ahead quickly through the weekend. Here comes our Clipper system. That's the European from early this morning. Again, the overnight run had this just a little bit further to the south. I'm going to keep it on the overnight run because I think this is probably a better solution to look at this morning. We're just talking about a little bit of a difference here. But again, watch this heavy band of snow that might develop on the northwest side of this into southern parts of Ontario. You know, once you get to Hamilton, Toronto, a little bit low, but I think just north and west of that would be a good spot for some snow, maybe back towards London. Get away from the lake. As this low wraps up, this heavy snow starts to pick up further to the north and east into Quebec. And then on the backside of this, wind, cold, blustery, rain mixing with snow showers, eventually turning to all snow showers underneath this cold pocket of air as it drops through Indiana, Illinois, and then here comes the snow. I mean, this is the overnight European. It's trying to pick up a little vortmax, a little piece of vorticity swinging through with this. This could bring you some enhanced snow into West Virginia, into parts of Southwest Virginia, Western North Carolina, the mountains of East Tennessee, and then the cold. Listen, I'm not going to leave you guys out in the Carolinas. This cold is going to push all the way into the south. And what's really interesting through the overnight run, do you see this in Virginia, into North Carolina? I'm telling you, there's a chance. That's about as far as I'm going to go. This is interesting to see this through the overnight run. I'm going to go back to yesterday's run. Look at this. It didn't put anything on the east side of the mountain. So I think what we're seeing, it's an anomaly through the overnight run. But hey, watch this in Virginia. Watch this in North Carolina. Are you going to get an early surprise snow? I'm not on board, and I'm not saying you are yet, but I'm shopping. I'm looking at this going, boy, if this cold pocket of air, which is right back here, this upper low, that does indeed swing right across the southern Appalachians, you can put that cold air right here. Look at the time. Early morning is going to be the key, too. If you can put that across central Virginia into North Carolina, wouldn't that be something to get a snow? Now, it's not as uncommon back into the mountains, but to see that swing east of the mountains, interesting to see that unfold. More to come. I'll be tracking it every single model run as we go through the next couple of days. So if you've not subscribed, come back. If you're brand new, I'm Travis. Welcome. I've worked in TV business for years. I worked as a chief meteorologist. That was my role, but I've been out of that business. And I always say this on the channel. Okay, here we go. You ready? Once you're a weather geek, you're always a weather geek. So if you enjoy geeking out with me here on the channel, sometimes we get into some of the details just like that right there. That little piece of energy is something to really watch. Let's look at the long range. Well, let's look at the temperatures first. Again, I don't want to be chastised for not showing you the temperatures. Someone says, you didn't show the numbers in the east, and I missed the west. So we might go back there in just a second. But here comes your temperatures. Again, mild through Saturday. There comes the cold. Into Sunday. Now we're into Monday. Look how that pushes all the way to the Atlantic, into the Gulf Coast. Temperatures way colder. And then as we head into Monday night into Tuesday, right? So if you don't see that snow here into this Piedmont of North Carolina and Virginia early on Tuesday, it's going to be too late. You're going to warm up into the 40s. Very low chance of seeing that. And then we start to warm back up. Let's look at the long range outlook. We'll go take you all the way through the next couple of weeks. This is the European extended weeklies. Once we get rid of this cold, we start to see warmer temperatures across the east, colder across the west. I think this is the stormy pattern that's starting to set up. And to me, it looks like it starts to flip cold again as we head into December, that is, across a good part of the eastern United States. And if you're still hanging around, we did skip the west. So let's look at these temperatures out here as we go through today. Warm across the southwest. Not bad, too. Boise up into the 60s. And as we head into Friday, a little bit colder air starting to work in across parts of Canada, Alberta, Saskatchewan. That's the real cold. Again, pushing just on the east side of the Rockies here. Single digits up here into Manitoba. Some really cold air moving south. A little bit of snow on the ground too, helping that cold stick around. And there's a look at your temperatures heading into Sunday. Warming up across a lot of the West, especially into California, into Oregon, back into the 60s. More to come. See you next time.